Welcome to Second Baptist of Seattle, where people wear coats in April. It's not so bad, is it? Hey, Nevis is a tiny Caribbean island. Just 12,000 people live on it. It shares nationhood with an island right next to it called St. Kitts. A man who's lived on Nevis his entire life told me that when he grew up, it was a place of great faith. In his words, 110% of the island went to church on Sunday. They believed in industry, making your own way, listening to your parents, that kind of thing. So about a decade ago, when Japan, trying to increase its ability to harvest whales, including in the Caribbean, wanted to extend into Caribbean waters, they offered Nevis what was reported to be $200 million in foreign aid. If Nevis and St. Kitts would just vote with Japan to allow them to get whales from the Caribbean. Shocking to many, Nevis voted it down. Now, put the politics of harvesting whales aside. Just imagine a tiny island, 12,000 people, 200 to the US means nothing. Imagine what $200 million could do to a tiny island like that. The level of living that could be increased with that one gift. Don't you kind of admire what they did? And wouldn't you like to be known as that kind of a person? The kind of person who can't be bought. You live by integrity. You live by principle. So the day you die, people says there's just something about her. She stands up for what she believes. There's something about him. He's just one of those guys. He's rock solid. Wouldn't you like to be that kind of a person? You can be. But it won't be an accident if you die with people thinking of you that way. It will be a deliberate choice built on a lot of choices you've made throughout your life in what I call second thought living. It's what Ecclesiastes 7 is leading us into, second thought living, where at first thought everything makes so much sense, but then second thought living says you need to look at the backside. Take a second look and see what's really at stake. At first thought, I'm sure some on Nevis thought, $200 million? Why are we even debating this? It's ridiculous. And perhaps some of the older people said, you know what? $200 million is a lot of money. But there are some things in this life that are worth even more than $200 million. That second thought living that leads to that kind of character. Ecclesiastes 7:1 begins with a verse that sets this up. It's sort of the thesis for all that will follow when the teacher says this: a good name is better than fine perfume. Now, in the ancient Near East, a name wasn't just a title. Joe, Mary, Antoine, Jennifer. A name spoke of a person's character. And what the teacher is saying here is that who you are on the inside matters more than what you smell like on the outside. In other words, what matters more than what we own or what we experience is who we are becoming. We're going to come back to this again and again. Who we are matters more. What matters more than what we own or what we experience is who we're becoming. Now, most of us, if we're not thoughtful or reflective, we're motivated by first thought living. I want that, I'm gonna buy it, I wanna experience it, that would be fun, I'm gonna do it. Second thought living says, pause for a second. Think about what this course of action is turning you into. What kind of person are you becoming? In other words, this is so key, what kind of name does this action create? So second thought living says take a step back and things that don't naturally seem true become true. We see this as the passage goes on. This is a surprising thought if you don't think of second thought living. The day of death, the teacher writes, is better than the day of birth. It's better to go to a house of mourning than to go to a house of feasting. For death is the destiny of everyone. The living should take this to heart. Now, at first thought, fasting is clearly better than feasting. Partying is a whole lot more fun than mourning. And certainly birth seems better than death unless you think life is about what you're becoming and you realize you learn a whole lot more at a funeral than you do at a birth announcement. Every time I have a friend or a coworker that has a baby, I'll come home and Lisa will ask me the 3 questions, and you all know what these will be. Boy or girl? How long? How much did it weigh? I don't know why it matters, but that's what you get asked every time. I've never been to a funeral where it begins, Jim was a man who died at 5 feet 11 inches, weighing 190 pounds. What is it? He was so kind. She was so loving. He was a man of prayer. She knew scripture like no one else. Going to a funeral challenges us in a way that births simply don't, because we see what a person has become, and it inspires us to reflect on what we're becoming as well. So feasting and partying, they're great for the moment. In fact, Ecclesiastes talks about how that can be good at times. But it says our heart should be in a place of reflection if we want to become the kind of people that have what we're going to talk about later as a standing ovation death. Verse 5 goes on like this: it is better to heed the rebuke of a wise person than to listen to the song of fools. You think about this. Would you rather be praised by a bunch of people that don't know who you are, or be constructively criticized by people who really do? Think about that in the age of Twitter, in the age of Facebook, with retweets and likes and sharing posts. I'll be honest, at first glance, I'll take the praise. Just as I would rather, if I'm paying money, I'd rather pay money for a massage than a root canal. Except, if I need a root canal and keep saying, no, a massage sounds like more fun, a month, 2 months, 3 months down the road, I'm gonna be a whole lot worse off. Because if you need a root canal, you gotta get the root canal. Proverbs 12:1 says this: whoever loves discipline loves knowledge, but he who hates correction is stupid. We recognize we're not perfect, so we want loving people to speak into our lives to help us become less destructive. Flattery doesn't shape us. It might affirm the wrong things. Constructive criticism does. It's not pleasant, but it's necessary. So first thought living, I hate criticism, shut up. Second thought living, I might learn something I need to know and no longer keep making the same mistakes. I've got to listen to this person, not to that crowd. Verse 7, extortion turns a wise person into a fool. A bribe corrupts the heart. Money's a good thing, right? You need it, get it however you can. Well, maybe not. It depends on how you get it. Elsewhere in Ecclesiastes, it praises the resources that come from hard work. But throughout Ecclesiastes and Proverbs, it warns against ill-gotten gain. Here's how ill-gotten gain is presented. It says, that kind of money is too expensive. It fills your bank account, but it empties your soul. You might have more, but you become less. So the process matters on second thought living. My wife and I got to spend this past week with my son. He's getting an MBA. And one of the classes we got to sit in, it was fascinating. One of the teachers, they're talking about ethics, started to put up a list of people who were celebrities for months because they were so wealthy and so successful as investors. And they were sought out by all of the fundraising banquets and in the pages of social magazines and whatnot, until it was revealed how they had gotten so wealthy, the cheating, the fraud, the lying. And she would put up these names, and now they lived in infamy. Some of them I didn't remember. This was 2 decades ago, but every student in that class knew it. As soon as she put their pictures up there online, oh yeah. I mean, they were smirking like, we don't want to become like them. So think about this, an MBA class saying, how do you avoid becoming like these people? Months of celebrity, years of infamy. Teacher was preaching that 3,000 years ago. Verse 8, the end of a matter is better than its beginning. Patience is better than pride. He's warning, if you rush a matter, the conclusion, if you forget the end game, you're gonna make a lot of mistakes. Be patient, that's second thought living. Don't do what immediately seems right. I speak a lot on marriage, I talk a lot to singles, and one of the saddest things my wife and I hear, in fact, I heard this just a couple weeks ago. Somebody comes up to me and says, I so should have listened to you. I just should have listened to you. One in particular, I'd warned her this is not a good match. She goes ahead, she says, we're getting a divorce. It was just awful. And I found that with some singles, they desire to get married because they want to be married, not because they found a wise person to marry. But here's the thing, you don't marry a relationship, you marry a person. How does Second Thought Living inform that? Think of it this way. Would you rather have 45 years of a happy, wonderful, healthy marriage, or 50 years of a grit your teeth, barely hang in there, kind of hope the other person dies marriage? If I ask it that way, there isn't a person in this room who says, I'll take the 45 years of a happy marriage over 50 years of a grit your teeth marriage. And yet many won't pay that price because they're single and it feels urgent. I want to be married now. What if I never get married? They don't think about the end game. I just got to be married now. I got to experience this now. They rush in. It says, don't do that. Think about the end. What's going to happen? Don't follow your first thought. Verse 9, do not be quickly provoked in your spirit, for anger resides in the lap of fools. This is common sense. Don't be a hothead. When we're angry, our initial response is almost always the wrong response, and it taints our name. I have one of the most wonderful moms who have ever lived. I don't want to send her this sermon. Mom, I love you. I don't view you this way. But she's one of the most generous women I know. She taught me to be open to the Holy Spirit. I'm so grateful to her. But when I was very young, I was out playing in the yard with a bunch of friends. And one of my friends got out into the street and almost got hit by a car. A car squealed its tires, honked its horn. The driver got out. He was yelling. My mom came running out. I'm sure she was just afraid. She just assumed it was me. And she gave me the spanking of my life. And I'm trying to tell her I didn't do this. But she was so angry. She wasn't going to hear it until she cooled down a little bit. And the other friends said it wasn't him. And one thing, it kind of freaks Lisa out. I remember almost nothing about my childhood. She said, it seems like you were born in junior high. I mean, because she'll ask me about something and I don't remember it. But here's the thing, I can't forget. And I'm not even sure I was in grade school yet. I can't forget a day getting the spanking of my life for something I never did. And I share this because I know I'm talking to a lot of parents with younger kids, and they make us angry. But here's the thing, parents. Kids don't always stay kids, and they have long memories. You need second thought living when you're a parent. Or even if you're married, you can be so frustrated. It can feel so good to let loose and tell them what you really think about them. Yeah. But if you do, you may say something your spouse will never unhear. So Second Thought Living says, don't be so quick. Take a step back. Look at the other side of what's going on. Verse 14, when times are good, be happy. But when times are bad, consider this. God has made the one as well as the other. See, First Thought Living, I want every day to be a weekend play day. Second Thought Living, you know what? Don't be overly influenced by the ups and downs of life. There's going to be good times. There's going to be bad times. Learn to accept the providence of God. He lets both kinds of times come in. In other words, what matters more than if the times are good or bad is if we're becoming good or bad in the times. Events don't define us. Our response to events is what defines us. You get a promotion. Seems like a good thing, right? Not if you become a jerk. Let it go to your head. You ignore your family because you want to get another promotion after that. Good thing, you become a bad person. That's what defines you. We've all seen people have terrible things happen and they become better people out of it. When Lisa and I were here, it wasn't too long after we were here. We didn't know this couple very well at the time, Joe and Janelle. Many of you know them. But just the story broke our hearts, being parents ourselves, when we heard they had lost their only son, their only child in college. I mean, the thought of losing a child is beyond my imagination. The thought of losing your only child so young, it just ripped us up. And then we got to know them. And we saw their response, and we saw the ministry that flowed from it. They have a place in this church that I don't think anybody else can have because they understand it. And the establishment of Garrett's house, where so many orphans are not only hearing Garrett's story, but hearing it. And Joe and Janelle consider those orphans their children. In one sense, they have more kids than anybody in this church. And these weren't just bad times. These are tragic times. The tough thing about losing a child, Joe and Janelle can tell, there is no vacation from losing a child. Every Christmas, every Thanksgiving, every birthday, every time one of his friends gets married or gets a job, you're reminded of your loss. You don't get away. It could make people so bitter. And I'm sure if you were to ask Joe and Janelle, would you rather be less mature and have less of a ministry if you could have Garrett? It would be an insult to ask that. But that's the thing, we don't get to choose. We don't get to pick the good times. We don't get to pick the bad times, but we can choose to become good or bad in the times. That's second thought living. Don't think about your first, what's happening. Think about what you're becoming. Verse 19, this sounds so unusual, but it is so true. Wisdom makes one wise person more powerful than 10 rulers in a city. Now, how many of you work for someone else? You're not your own boss. Raise your hand if that is. I mean, most of us live that way. And here's something I know: if you work for someone else, you disagree with your boss, right? There are things you think you can do better, things you think are right. That's just natural. That's human nature. It's why Thomas Jefferson said, seek to be self-employed. Otherwise, you'll never have full freedom. But second thought living says, you know what? Be careful before you have to be in charge. Because what if real power isn't about being in charge of others? What if true power is about learning to be in charge of yourself? That's second level thinking. We've always seen how power can corrupt people. They become jerks. They don't handle it well. People get frustrated with them. But humility, that heals people. That builds character. So what he's saying is this: don't seek a position that will fill your bank account and puff up your pride and deflate your soul. Seek real power. This is so key. Being strong and being in charge are two different things. Seek to be strong. Make choices that build you into a wise person. That's second thought living. Verse 21, do not pay attention to every word people say. You may hear your servant cursing you. What this is telling us is public acclaim is like the weather. It comes and goes. People say good things. People say bad things. It says just ignore it. Just let it go. It doesn't have to define you. Don't focus on it. Don't even give attention to it. This last week, Focus on the Family aired 2 programs that I taped before. It's great. I mean, it's great for book sales. You get nice letters. Hey, I heard you on Focus. It was great. It was wonderful. But there's this one woman, and she even lives in another country. She just doesn't like me. And people will say nice things about me on Facebook, and they'll tag me, and it's like she trolls to tell him, you don't understand, he's a bad guy. He teaches terrible things. And I was like, can you just take a break? I mean, go on a vacation. I mean, maybe you need a massage. I mean, just let it go. But here's the thing. Here's what I live by. I want to preach this as a sermon one time. Nehemiah, if we ever get to Nehemiah, the last verse of Nehemiah. If you remember Nehemiah, he built a wall around Jerusalem in 455 BC. And he's doing it because God called him to it. He was lied about. He was slandered. He was threatened. People give improper motives to him that just weren't true. They said he just wanted to take charge. That wasn't the case. And here's how the book ends. Here's what Nehemiah learned. This is becoming one of my life verses. Nehemiah 13:31. Remember me with favor, my God. That's all I care about. That's all you should care about. Who cares what other people think about it? It's God, remember me with favor, right? I can't stop people from lying about me. You can't stop people from lying about you. Well, she thinks she's a good parent, but you should see, he thinks he's a good guy, but you should hear what he does. You know what? Their opinion doesn't matter. God, what does your opinion matter? I can't stop them from lying about me, but I can stop caring what they say about me. I can change it. Remember me with favor, my God. That second level thinking. In the end, second thought living completely changes the way we view things. We think life, at first thought, is about acquiring things and experiencing things. If you were to take the psychology of our culture and boil it down, it's those two things. Because here's what we fear the most. We fear boredom, and we fear poverty. Don't let me be poor, don't let me be bored. And our first thought is, how do I alleviate poverty and how do I alleviate boredom? Second thought living says there's a more important question. Who are you becoming? When you acquire that, when you experience it, what kind of person is it turning into? What is it doing to your name? That's what should drive your decision. It's not about what we acquire or what we experience. It's about what we become, a wise person who fears God. So second thought living says this: more important than a long life is a faithful life. More important than worldly wealth is spiritual wisdom. More important than pleasure is character. More important than what we experience is what we're becoming. And more important than what we own is who we are. See, first thought living is often disastrous. That looks fun, I should do it. Second thought living says, but what about the consequences? I was in Trumbull, Connecticut a few weeks ago. I've been doing a lot of stuff with Chick-fil-A, so I keep getting these free cards for free food and Chick-fil-A sandwiches and whatnot. And one of them gave me one of the treat cards that has free milkshakes. And when I was growing up, I would have lived on milkshakes if I could. I just can't do that now. I don't remember the last time I had a milkshake. But I had the free card. I said, I'm going to do it. And I was reminded why I love them so much. Those things are murderously good. That afternoon, I had to go for a run before I spoke. It was a windy day. It's hilly in Trumbull. Of course, I'm not used to either that much wind or hills here. It was work. 6 miles, I was feeling it. I got back. I did the math. Calorie-wise, it took that entire run to work off that milkshake. Second thought living would be, is it worth it? I don't know, those milkshakes are pretty good. But normally, looking at the course of your life, it's just taking that second thought. Yeah, immediately this is what I want to experience, but in the end, what kind of person is it turning me to? First thoughts are expensive. If we never get beyond first thought living, we'll be cleaning up, covering up, or suffering the consequences of our poor choices for our entire lives. It leads to superficial living. Second thought living leads us to become people of integrity and character who can't be bought. Jesus was king of second thought living. He said, the greatest among you will be a servant. Die to live, give to keep, deny yourself to save yourself. None of those thoughts at first glance make any sense. And then you look at the other side, say, oh, there's a whole nother way to live. So I let the negative and the positive direct me. Negatively, I might be stressed, I might be shamed, and I might be tempted to go into my mode of choice, self-medicating, whether it's substance abuse, whether it's food, whether it's tearing somebody down, exploding with temper, whether it's going somewhere on the internet to gamble or look at places you shouldn't be looking at and you think, well, it will make me feel better, it will make me forget, and I just need to get away. Second thought living says, but isn't it making you weaker? Isn't it making your life worse? Are you sure you want to go down that road? And then I use it for positive living. In the morning, there are so many urgent things to do. A lot of work to get done, emails to answer. But I remember, you know what? If I want to be a wise person, if I want to be a person who has God active in their life and who's shaping them, I can't miss that time of prayer. I can't miss that time of study. Through the end, that's how I grow in the Lord. And so something is even more urgent than the urgent task, and that is growing my soul and building my mind to become a wise person. Or then in the evening, when I'm tired, it is so much easier to watch than to read. But if I haven't read yet, I've got to ask myself, it's easier, that's the first choice. What kind of mind is this creating? What is this turning me into? If you want the best life, a life that has meaning, stop asking, what am I acquiring? What am I experiencing? And instead ask, who am I becoming? What kind of person are these choices turning me into? Look, it's a cliche, but this is a true cliche. The choices you make you. And that's what second thought living is all about. It tells us a good name is better than fine perfume. That it's not about what you acquire or experience, but about what you become. Reflecting on death, as sad as that seems, shapes us more than rejoicing over a birth. That the end of a matter is better than the beginning, and patience is better than pride. That it's not about the good bad times or the bad times. It's about whether we become good or bad in the times. It's about realizing that real power may not be being in charge of others. True power, the kind of power that matters, is about being in charge of ourselves. It's about learning to not listen to the naysayers, but instead pray, remember me with favor, my God. And when we do that second thought living, it leads to what you could call a standing ovation life. I've had the same acquisitions editor at Zondervan for a couple decades. I know him so well, so I know from the tone of his voice when something isn't right. And he was calling, and we started talking. I said, John, something's up. What is it? I said, oh, Gary, thank you for asking. He'd had another author, not very well known. I'd never heard of him. He lived in Australia, and he had died so young, in his early 40s, and he was one of the good ones. He loved his family. He loved his God. He was courageous. He had a great mind. It was just so sad that he had died so young. You know, somebody makes it their 80s and 90s, you kind of celebrate the good life. When somebody dies that young, there's just that sadness. Boy, they had such a good start. I just wish they could have really finished it. And then he said he was so overwhelmed when somebody called him right after the funeral. They had the coffin in front of the church, and at first people were just sad. They admired him, but they were just sad that he was gone. Then after the service, the coffin was closed, and the pallbearers came up, and they started to walk down the aisle, and as they did, somebody was shocked because somebody started clapping. And then others joined in, and now everybody's clapping, and then somebody stood up, and everybody stands up, and it is a thunderous standing ovation at the man in that coffin walking down the aisle for the final time, being carried down the aisle for the final time. And what they were saying is he died far too young, but this was a standing ovation life. His name was better than sweet perfume. If that's how you want to be remembered, if that's the way you want people to respond when you're gone, learn the secret of second thought living.